Take a pew. Lovely to see you.
You too.
You've outshone me on the dress stakes already. I'll live with that. I was wondering where we were going to start on this, and then I realized there are so many possibilities, but literally 5 minutes or so ago, the current favourite for the Melbourne Cup, Salcombe,
Yep.
one of your horses, your training, was trialling in Sydney. You've got horses racing at the weekend all over the place, pretty much every day. I don't know how you focus on all these things at once, so give us a little bit of inside information. In fact, first, do you know how Salcombe got on?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't?
So, no, but through the day, I'll get reports filtering into me. They started 3:30, 4 o'clock this morning from different stables around Australia. We get information, we pass that information on. We try and keep a system that's effective. I get told when I'm not doing my job properly or efficiently.
Do you?
I do. 365 days of the year. And that's the beauty of this industry. We have to continue to compete at a top level. We have to be transparent. We have to run a business on the largest of scales, working with some of the best people in the world and all walks of life, all nationalities, religions, you name it. So if you're not staying up with the play, you get left behind.
Yeah, well, at that point of scale is really interesting, particularly in a sense where you've come from. And I want to explore a little bit of your route to this position, because you came over from New Zealand, not from a racing background, a farming background, I think is right, isn't it?
Yeah, farming background. But Australia and New Zealand, it's rugby, racing and beer. It's as simple as that. And so you grow up listening. In New Zealand, it's about the All Blacks or horse racing or other sports. Your grandparents will talk about it, your parents will talk about it. I was lucky enough to have a basic understanding of horse racing, got to learn the great horses, the stars, the jockeys, the trainers, and the personalities.
You can't know where you're going to end up in life. We all know that. You can look back, and perhaps we could look and see a progression to get there, but did you really ever think you might be over in Australia, the proud owner of a title which says you've had 140-odd Group 1 winners? When you had your first win, it was Group 3, I think, wasn't it, in New Zealand? Could you imagine you'd have got this far?
No, not at all. As simple as that. And that's what racing can do. It just takes you on an amazing adventure, and that's what it's been. I don't like to look too far back. It's all about now, but I'm very appreciative of where I've come from and the success we've had along the way. It's been very special.
You said there that it's a business, and you've created a big business, and you've got operations all over the place. Has that developed organically, or is there a structure to that? Did you work out the plan?
It's just evolved. We started with, 20 horses, and I've continued to run a model of 20 horses, except we'll expand the model and increase the senior management, just like any other business, and growing with challenges. So whether we've got 20 horses or 200 horses, there'll be a person and a team of people in charge of those 20 horses. So we've got 240 horses at the moment around Australia in 4 different stables. So that's obviously a lot of teams that just get up and go and follow the simple model that I set. And I don't think we'll go to 260, 280, 300, 320 or 2,000. I think 240 is enough. But it works. It's just growing by the multiples of 20 basically. When I got up to around the 40, I was starting to get noticed. I think you do need numbers.
Right.
And then obviously 80, which was in Sydney alone, it really started to get up to the top end. And following on from that, it's just been amazing. Opening up stables in Melbourne has given us the base to be able to perform at the high level at the main carnivals, as it has in Queensland with the Gold Coast. So each step sort of, some people might think, Chris Waller's made it overnight, but I've been here in Australia for about 23 years, training for about 26 years. So each year to me has been just that little step Until the last 5 years, we haven't grown. We've stayed the same, and now just trying to look at other aspects, which I'm sure we'll touch on shortly.
Yeah, I think we will. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned also the All Blacks early on there, and I was trying to get to a stage where you reach a certain scale, which you've done, so people know what they get from a sort of the Chris Waller operation. But you are hugely dependent on the people working with you, and part of the discussion that we're having over the course of these 3 days is about attracting and retaining staff. What is the key to that for you?
The key for me is probably working with them, making sure you are part of that team and you can see these younger people grow and learn from you, and you learn from them, because one person can only do so much. So there's a huge amount of delegation, huge amount of trust. And in our field, where we're starting at early hours and working demanding shifts throughout the 365 days of the year, including public holidays, it's demanding. So I think working with your team is number one, and secondly, getting the best out of those people. As you touched on, retention is difficult in any industry, especially at the moment where there's such a low unemployment rate. So yeah, it's changed a lot, and getting the most out of your team is the key.
Are you saying there actually you find it difficult to attract and retain?
Yeah, we certainly do. I think the biggest challenge is the hours we work. We start at 3:45 at Rose Hill. We do a split shift, and to the younger generation, they've got other options. So often it can be a fill-in job until they find something better. Or to the stage where they can just work mornings or just do other parts of the job that they enjoy. So yeah, that is a huge challenge, but everybody's working on it collectively to make that better. But at the same time, yep, it's a huge challenge, and certainly in Australia, from all aspects of the economy to retain labour and make sure we've got enough to do what we want to do, which is provide the best product.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to help in terms of attracting, if you're attracting them into a winning stable, into a winning environment. Before we get on to the owners, I do want to talk a little bit about one or two of your great successes, the great horses. Everyone always wants to talk about Winx, for example. I think it was 33 consecutive wins at the point of retirement. At what point did you know what you had?
I don't think we ever knew what we had. Yeah, and I still get emotional speaking about it. But just an amazing racehorse, and yeah, every hurdle, every bar you asked her to step to, she would take it. So at what stage? Probably second Cox Plate. First Cox Plate, she announced herself. The second Cox Plate, she said, well, I'm still here. And then everything else followed on from there. So I guess right up until the end, we didn't know what the future would be. As you said before, nobody knows what's in store for us, especially with a horse like that. She would run on all track conditions, whether it be lightning fast or the wettest conditions, distances from 1100 to 2200, from her 2-year-old year to, I think it was 7-year-old when she retired. So it was an amazing journey. And
that's interesting, that point about longevity as well, because that, let's be honest, that's where you kick in as well, isn't it? As a trainer, you've got
that's just about where I kicked out.
But you can't have a great horse without looking after it over many years, and that presumably is that's your great challenge, isn't it?
It is. You look after the horse, they'll look after you. But there's so many temptations in life, especially in sport, and there's no better way of explaining it to a global audience. We've got racing in every part of the globe. We want to take Winx everywhere we can, but the temptation had to be just shut down and say, well, look, the horse comes first. We want to continue racing her for a little bit longer, because if you want to go to every special racing carnival that we have, you won't get to too many for too long. and compete at that highest level, which is what a horse is expected to do. It's a little bit different to travelling an athlete,
Yeah.
and they even get affected by jet lag.
You're looking at one here.
We all do. And horses have to be 100% or very close to it when they run, because they're running against the best in the world, and every racing jurisdiction has their own stars. Their home turf is hallowed ground in terms of, you go to Hong Kong, try and beat the best horse there, or you'll come off second best. You go to Dubai, you go to Japan, America, England, France, any country, it's New Zealand, it's so hard to beat the locals. So yeah, resisting those temptations was a big part of her longevity.
It's interesting how you put that, and if you don't mind me asking, I'll push a little bit on that, because it sounds like an Peak sort of almost regret that you didn't take Winx abroad. Is there a little bit of that now? And perhaps were Winx to be competing now at the start of her great reign, the international sort of landscape has changed a bit, as you would well know, and you've got involved in now. Would you do things any differently?
It's hard to say. It really is. I think for her to win her last race was so important, because she rose to a different type of status here in Australia, similar to Black Caviar a few years before. She became a household name, and the households expect the horse or the athlete to keep winning. Yes, they accept defeat, but she was doing a great job for racing here in Australia. She was being recognised and respected from all around the world. And yeah, just knowing the challenges of horse health and management and their seasons that they're controlled by, especially a female horse, it would have been a huge challenge. So I doubt she would have kept winning. So I think we made the right decision.
I've got to say, just the last thing on Winx, but the emotion you're showing here, just talking about her, I can't imagine what it was like when she finished that 33rd. I bet you were in no state.
Yeah, the first time I spoke at an event like this was much smaller. It was just the local RSL, the local club. I just couldn't stop crying. Yeah, it was such an amazing journey, but it was so taxing. But it's one that we have huge respect for, and a huge privilege to be part of her career.
Now, with Nature Strip, you've been to Royal Ascot, you've got a winner abroad there. How does that compare in terms of emotion and feel? It's a different frontier, isn't it?
It was, yeah. With Nature Strip, I was representing Australia and New Zealand, which is a huge privilege. Yeah, so it was very special from that perspective. And obviously the horse, he's a great sprinter, and to showcase the Australian sprinters on the world stage was very special. And just like, again, any racing jurisdiction around the world, we were so well looked after, and it was just an honour to be there. And to bring the powerhouses of horseflesh together, it's unique, and that's something that Ascot provides at that time of the year. Dubai does now, but obviously it's hard to get the Australian horses there. You've got Saudi and so many other new countries opening up and showing what they've got to offer. So it's a great time to be owning racehorses, training racehorses, riding them and following them, because the more horses we can get on the global stage running at their best, it's great for the industry as a whole.
Now, as a trainer, of course, you're sort of at the fulcrum of all of that, aren't you? The owner, the rider, yourselves. Let's get on to the owner. You've talked about managing a horse, that you have to treat them as individuals, almost as human beings. How do you treat the owner?
You have to treat them pretty well, otherwise they'll leave quite quickly. It's the same again with any business. If you're not looking after your investor, they won't reinvest. And I'm not blessed with having great communication skills or being an outgoing person, so the owner that I get coming through the shop window needs to stay. So that's something you learn quite quickly. If you close a door, it's hard to reopen it. So always leave the door open. The customer's always right. It's just the same philosophy that works in any business. So,
That's an interesting point you make there. You say the customer is always right. You would know very well that there are times when the customer is not right, and you've got to put the customer right.
yeah, well,
And when it comes down to a horse, I mean, we're talking a pretty serious decision.
if you come down to the welfare of the horse and you say to an owner, look, the horse can't run this weekend, I haven't had an owner that said, oh, you just have to because I've taken my friends to the races or things like that. So people are understanding of the horse. Again, just put the cards on the table, tell the truth. And that's what normal people respect. And we are dealing with a lot of people, but normality is the key, and they're dealing with an animal, unpredictable. You can't stage winning races. You can't see what's in the future of a racehorse. So just having things just simmering away on a nice scale without too many ups and downs is something we try and create. And from the entry point, try not to give them unrealistic expectations. At the same time, try and deliver some good results, and they'll come back.
And what level of communication should they expect from you, do you think? Or do you again have to say the customer is right? If they want to pester me day in, day out, then that's just what I have to put up with? Or can you set the sort of boundaries, the terms?
Yeah, we can set the boundaries by telling the truth, being transparent, and telling them as things happen. So I think being consistent with that information is the key. It's no use just sending an owner an update on a Monday and then not getting one until 3 Mondays later. It needs to be consistent. They need to know the bad news as it happens, and I feel they deal with it better that way rather than saying, oh, by the way, we sent your horse for a break or it hurt itself last week. There and then they accept it. And it seems to work. They're very understanding owners, but you need to engage with them and need consistent engagement.
Well, owners are changing, aren't they? Or at least the landscape of ownership is changing. Syndicates are more familiar to you now.
Yeah.
Micro-ownership we're talking about. How much does that affect you? I mean, how much do you have to change your sort of modus operandi?
Well, I've always had to be in that path because when I started training, I wasn't a very good horse trainer, and all I could do was just engage with the owner, tell them my perspective, tell them what we're trying to achieve, why we didn't achieve it, and where the future is. Prior to my age of trainers, the generation before, it was pick up the newspaper and see when your horse is racing, or come for a lunch with me once a month and I'll tell you how your horse is going, and I'll tell you your next horse that I've just bought for you as well. Like, everybody's got choice from what they go into, how much they take of that horse, how many horses they want to take this year, what trainer they choose. So you've got to respect that choice and engage and change with the generations. So I myself have had to change recently. You can see the new generation coming through, and how savvy they are with social media, engaging with clients, and breaking the rules of 20 years ago. There wasn't so many trainers in different stables. Now most owners would have horses in multiple stables.
Spread around.
Yeah, spread around. They've got their favourite trainers, but they'll still give horses to other trainers. So I have to respect that. I have to understand that. I have to try and ensure that they want Chris as the trainer just as much as the new person coming along.
You've got big owners, small owners. You've also got celebrity owners. I think Richmond footballers have a stake in Salcombe as well, don't they?
Yeah,
how does that change the picture for you?
Well, it doesn't change it for me, because you just respect each person for who they are. And it was very hard to start with, because I've started from the bottom, as I would call it, and meeting so many high-profile people, it's quite it's overawing. It's something that you'd struggle to get put yourself in their company. But in recent years, I'm coping with it better. But what you're learning from these people and successful people, and from all walks of life, is we're pretty much the same. So that's been a big hurdle to get over. But understanding people and what they want out of ownership, you can gauge that fairly quickly from their body language, the way they talk, and yeah, just learning the person you're dealing with is a big thing.
So, what to you is the direction of ownership, do you think? And that's something we're going to be discussing after our conversation as well. The owner, where do they fit? How is racing changing? And how important is it that it does change or not?
Well, it is important that it changes, and it changes to the appetite of what our customer is. So I think it's more like a portfolio, like a share portfolio now. You've got your blue chips, which are your expensive horses, but people are taking a smaller percentage of them instead of buying a $1 million horse. There's very few people that can do that. So there's people that now have shares in $1 million horses. It might be 2%, it might be 5%, all the way down to the lesser scale, the $100,000 horse, which is so important and still an expensive commodity. There's people with 2%, 5%, even less now. So I think we can see that you need to be able to provide a person with that option, share option of the blue chips, the less risky type of investment, as well as the speculative shares. So that's how I see horse ownership now, and on what scale is determined on the the owner's investment and obviously their return. Normally, a person gets a good return from an owner from a horse, they'll reinvest. So it's just great to see the way racing's heading here in Australia. It would be the leader in the world. Previously, Hong Kong and Japan have clearly been the standouts, but I think Australia, through some good management, has lobbied their way into those circles, and the rest of the world is following on what can be achieved and how horse ownership's evolving. And the returns on investment are so important, but there's more to it than that. It's obviously, we're in a very lucrative part of the world. Not all countries or jurisdictions have gambling, or gambling as successful as we have here in Australia.
But I mean, you clearly operate as a business. You run a business, which is a very successful one. I'm not trying to take away from your passion and love of racing, but that is a change even from when you started out, presumably, in terms of the relationship you have with owners. And I mean, you're very self-deprecating, and so, you don't get out there and play the hail fellow well met. This is what I deliver and this is how it works. But nonetheless, you've had to do that. You've had to glad hand big owners. You've had to work them round. You've had to persuade them and cajole them. Is it changing? Is it much more of a business structure for you?
It is, yeah, it is. But especially on my scale now, so I can't go out and have a lunch every day or dinners. I've got a family. I also respect my family life. So basically, from 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, I've got to put everything I can into my business.
You start at 3:30.
Yeah, I do. The investor obviously is the key.
But you stop at 6.
Yeah, I do. Phone off. And you learn along the way. You can sense when people aren't happy, when you're not giving the right person the right love. But being consistent with how you give your time, I think, is key. As I said before, it's no use just ringing a person consecutively for 3 days leading into a horse sale and then not ringing them again for 3 months afterwards until the next horse sale. So you learn pretty quick. You've got to be consistent with what you do. So again, it's very simple to any other business, but it is a business on a big scale, and we need to do things right, otherwise you'll learn quickly.
I've mentioned you're obviously a New Zealander. The All Blacks have come up a couple of times. I know you buy very much into their philosophy on sport and life. And I think someone else said it yesterday, so I can say it today. Don't be a dickhead was always the phrase that comes out of the All Blacks. Have you found over time that there are representatives, maybe owners as well, who you think, you know what, they're not my type. I'm not taking any more of their horses.
Occasionally, it's rare.
I'm not asking for names.
No.
Just the principle.
I think people gravitate to you. They'll try you and see if I work for them, and vice versa. And if there's a great karma there, it's a great relationship for many, many years. It's a very special bond, a horse trainer and the owner, the highs and lows, as well as the people that come with it. Their friends, family, it all becomes one big reunion most Saturdays. So, it's a unique position to be in, that's for sure.
A little bit later in the day, Chris, we're going to talk about mental health issues. You've got umpteen fabulous victories to reflect on and to look forward to. You've had to swallow hard on defeats as well. You presumably have a roller coaster ride as well. I just wonder how easy it is to find an equilibrium and how important that is to you when you're looking at jockeys and your other staff and their way of life.
I guess when you've got so much interaction with people, you can gauge them pretty quickly how they're coping, and it might be from the leading jockeys in Australia to your staff, to owners. I think good communication, you get to find out how people are travelling and the challenges that they face, and especially for a trainer, you're coming from next to nothing up to where we are, and then you'll have the highs and lows of a Winx arriving, departing, and new horses coming along, the disappointments. How do I cope with it? I cope best by firstly communicating with the owners, because I go to bed at night knowing I've put everything on the table, the good, the bad. Dealing with that and having a good night's sleep is my mental health. I look forward to going to sleep. I don't have to worry about anything. I've done everything, and that's my way to stay the same person each day. Nature Strip's running on Saturday here in the Lightning. He's getting older. I'm constantly concerned about your big race runners, but Saturday night I'll go home, win, lose or draw. I don't build myself up going to the races thinking that he's going to win. He's got the highest rating sprinter in the world, so he's just going to win. I don't think like that. I just think, okay, whatever happens, happens, and as long as we're well prepared, I think it just takes the emotions out of it. I won't be going out having a big night Friday night or anything like that, or Saturday night. I just want to keep the same as if it's any other day, and I think mentally that helps you stay in the place you need to be.
Well, we'll be focusing on it, that's for sure, because we'll be there and cheering the nature spirit on. But the expectation is probably what kills you in a way, isn't it? When you have the favourite, when you're expected to win, that's when the pressure really comes on, is it? That's presumably when you fret the most.
Well, I guess especially when you've got races like the Melbourne Cup worth so much money, the Golden Eagle, the Everest worth $15 million. That's a lot of money and a lot of expectations riding on the expectation of the owner. But outside of those races, race day you start to feel the tension of the punter, the gambler, the social media side of things. But again, all we can do is be transparent. If there's a problem, pass the problem on. Be upfront with the integrity side of racing, because 10 years ago you would often go to the races not with a dark secret, but something that you could have probably passed on. 9 times, probably 99 times out of 100 you get away with it. Horses that might have had a slight temperature or a slight issue and they still win a race. But nowadays you just don't take those risks. You pass things on, you get to the races and you might have a few less runners, your horse might be scratched, but at least you've been up front, and I think it takes the emotion of race day out. And then, so getting back to the gambling side of the business, that's all changed as well. Like people want more information. The information needs to be factual. especially in a big stable. We've got multiple runners in a race, so you've got to be ready for the so-called pacemaker, the race has been set up. We know all the jibes that come post-race, so we've got to be ready for it. We've got to be well prepared and make sure that it's seen as a clean stable and all of these little things. If you can go well prepared, it makes Saturday night a bit more enjoyable.
You pointed out it's great business, doing extremely well here in Australia in particular. But part of what we've been talking about and will continue to talk about is how you make racing more appealing, more attractive. You've focused on wagering, on the inside track, if you like. How important is that, do you think, the entertainment element now in today's sort of landscape?
Well, we see the beauty of modern era is we can see what sports are being challenged. And I'd use cricket as an example. We've seen it evolve so many times over the last 30-odd years, from traditional 5-day test matches to one-day cricket, that it was just big news when it came in here in Australia. And then all of a sudden 2020 cricket comes in, and one-day cricket's no longer what people want. 5-day cricket's sort of come back, but only if the good teams are playing, so people want good horses playing. And then you've got the 2020, people want fast action. So I can see with racing, we're evolving with that, with these pop-up races. We've got to have diversity, got to change with what the audience want. And if we can't keep the audience want, whether it be the product we're giving them and the big named horses, which are so important. We saw that with Black Caviar, Winx, and there's so many other champions around the world before. It's the big names that bring the horses to the races. The big names aren't always there, so it's our job to make sure that we fill the gaps, and that's looking after the owner, looking after the punter, looking after the horses. So it's our job, who do have the intellectual property to be able to do it, to make sure that each of these other areas are making sure people are coming back to the races, people are reinvesting, and it's a socially acceptable sport.
I just want to ask you as a last thought, really, for all the facets of your job, what you do, what's the best bit for you, apart from your head hitting the pillow after getting up at 3:30 in the morning?
Winning races. It's as simple as that, and that's the same as everybody that's in horse ownership, or working with committees, clubs, seeing a great horse win, or having that sense of ownership or pride, whether you actually do own a share or not. Winning a race is second to none, and it doesn't matter where it is. It can be the biggest races in the world. We've been lucky enough to win a few of them, but we still get a good kick out of a maiden winning at a lesser track anywhere in Australia, and seeing the thrill and engagement it brings with the connections, with the strapper. Winning is what we're here for.
Chris, it's been fabulous talking to you. Thank you very much for your time and for communicating with everyone out here. I have no doubt you have many, many more winners coming up, and I'm sure there may be one or two on Saturday. Work out where you're going to put your pennies on Saturday as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Waller.
Thank you.